All right, guys, it's day 9 here, recovering from my UCL ligament injury. So it's Sunday night, and we're approaching the next week, so that now I can start doing a little bit of training. But I wanted to talk a little bit about one of the hurdles, one of the parts of my recovery that have needed to be addressed from the beginning and are becoming even more important as this week approaches, when I start to incorporate more weighted things. It's up here in the mind. So it is very important from the very first day when I got this injury, all right, that first day, the first couple hours on that day, once Dr. Jones diagnosed me, I was very down, I was very depressed. And I was spent maybe 2-3 hours that way, because I knew what I was getting into, right? So I knew, I wasn't quite sure exactly how the injury happened because I didn't have pain. B, I knew it was going to be a long-ish recovery because it's a ligament injury, and that just takes time, much more than a muscular injury. And C, my identity is wrapped up in my ability to train and lift and teach and move, right? So this influenced my ability to do all those things, which is very anxiety provoking, right? It's been an interesting kind of process over the last week. A lot of people, they like taking a week off, right? I found myself restless and wanting to move and train, but I had to decide differently. I had to still do movement, but it was different. It couldn't be intense. It couldn't be particularly difficult, because I had to think long term about this injury. So I had to spin the negative self-talk in my head and make it more positive. As I mentioned in the very first video, after those few hours of being depressed and down on myself, I realized I can take this opportunity to make videos and redirect that energy into something positive to help others. And so that has continued for the last 9 days, and making these videos has helped tremendously with cutting down on the negativity inside my own head. So here we are entering the second week, where I can actually reestablish a little bit of upper body training, right? We're like doing a little bit of pushing and pulling in some fashion. And one thing I will have to face is that pain was never present when I got this injury. And normally, in the past, when I've had injuries, pain was present, and pain taught me what I should and shouldn't do. And so when something would start to become painful, I would stop. And I learned over many years how to associate the various levels of pain with the different choices in training I was making. And that comes from experience. No possible way anyone could have taught me that, all right? That had to come from life and doing, all right? So here I am, about to re-engage in some level of weight training with my injured arm, and I cannot trust the pain response, because when I originally injured this, I was doing front squats, I was doing front rack lunges, I was demonstrating thoracic extension exercises where my arms were in this position as well on a bench, and I didn't feel anything bad at any point. So that means as I re-engage in stuff, I'm going to have to tread cautiously and have a different strategy. I can't rely on pain giving me feedback. So currently, here is my strategy. All right? When I'm going to go back to front rack stuff first, all right? Meaning I will not have any front rack to overhead anything. All right, so there won't be any movement of the elbow joint from a front rack position. It'll simply be an isometric contraction. So I'll do moderate weight, meaning like 70% or less front squats for a few reps, a few sets of a few reps, things like that on my maybe my front rack carries, and I'll stick with that for a week. I won't even mess with anything else. During the next week, I'm going to integrate some flexion extension exercises. So, bicep curls of slow tempos, tricep extension work with slow tempos, and start to incorporate very light loads under high tension and slow speeds, while I'm still doing the isometric front rack work. If that all goes well during that second week, the third week, I'll start to reintegrate some barbell pressing and pulling. So some basic strict press, some basic bench press, maybe a little bit of horizontal rowing with the barbell, playing a little bit with probably the lat pull down before I get into pull-ups. That way I can do less than my body weight, at that week. And so I'm looking at probably 4 weeks from today before I even integrate any sort of like push presses or jerks or snatches, right, which are fast and explosive. So I'm implementing this strategy because normally I would have pain being able to guide me as I go, but I can't trust that this time because it never was there the first time I injured this ligament, 9 days ago. So that's my strategy, and I can assure you that there's a lot of fear and anxiety in here. When I go to do the first set of front squats, there's going to be like, oh God, I'm scared. I'm gonna hurt myself again. These are all normal thoughts, and everyone goes through it. And the best thing I've found to do with all these anxiety-provoking, stressful, negative self-talk is to identify the negativity that you're saying to yourself, and then in that moment, turn it on its head. Make it into a positive, right? Something complimentary about yourself, something affirmative about what you are doing, rather than talking about what you can't do, all right? And say it in the present tense, like what I am doing rather than what I have done, right? A past tense. So those negative self-talk stuff and the negative thoughts and anxiety-provoking kind of images, they're all gonna be here for me. Doesn't matter how experienced I am, but the difference between how I handle that and how someone else who becomes sort of paralyzed with fear is simply that I am going into it with life experience and an understanding of the power of the mind and a plan of action based on recent history and life experience. So stay tuned for the progress during this second week of my recovery.